Over the past few weeks, we've been diving into key highlights from our latest publication, Are You Reporting for a Sustainable Future? South Africa's Perspective on a Changing Global Landscape. My name is Thamesha Chetty, and joining me today are my colleagues Dino and Dipthi Govind. We'll be continuing the conversation around South African entities and their readiness to report in accordance with the standards issued by the ISSB. In our previous episode, we covered concepts of materiality and reporting boundary, and today we're going to be shifting our focus to the specific disclosure requirements known as the core content within the ISSB standards.
So what do we mean by the core content? Well, in a previous episode, we mentioned that our benchmarking exercise showed that many South African listed companies are already applying the recommendations of the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, or TCFD for short. So the TCFD is a framework that's widely used across the world for reporting on climate-related risks and opportunities. And this framework is built on 4 key pillars, and these are aspects of business operations. So the key pillars is strategy, risk management, governance, and targets and metrics. So from an ISSB perspective, the ISSB standards are structured around these 4 pillars, and this is what we then refer to as the core content.
Building on that, the 4 pillars and each area of core content in the ISSB standards has a specific disclosure objective. Governance disclosures help users to understand an entity's governance processes, as well as procedures and controls used to monitor, manage, and oversee sustainability-related risks and opportunities. The strategy pillar addresses how an organization manages its sustainability-related risks and opportunities. The information in the risk management disclosures provides insights on an entity's processes to identify, assess, prioritize, and monitor sustainability-related risks and opportunities. And lastly, metrics and targets. Once an organization identifies its sustainability-related risks and opportunities, an organization is expected to disclose the relevant metrics and targets for users to be able to understand the entity's performance against those risks and opportunities.
Now, while the ISSB standards may be based around these pillars contained within the TCFD, in applying the requirements of the ISSB standards, these disclosures would need to be provided irrespective of whether an entity uses the TCFD or not. Now, many listed South African entities produce integrated reports as well as sustainability reports. So as part of this process, they're already providing a lot of information in these particular areas. And these both cover broader business considerations as well as sustainability-related information.
That's absolutely correct, Nash. So in our benchmarking exercise, we saw that companies were in a very good place to start applying the disclosure requirements for these core content elements. But we had some observations. These were things that we saw were maybe a little bit more complex or required some additional considerations. So firstly, for the risk management disclosures, entities should broaden these disclosures to include things around your sustainability-related opportunities and not only focus on these risks. Secondly, when assessing and disclosing the resilience of an entity's business model and strategy, IFRS S2 actually requires the use of a climate scenario analysis. But we see that this climate scenario analysis is a rather complex and involving area of sustainability reporting. And then lastly, for GHG emissions, specifically Scope 3 GHG emissions, we see that this is a very complex and challenging area for entities, especially relating to data collection and processing.
These challenges also present an opportunity. Now is an ideal time for organizations to assess their current disclosures of governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets. This assessment will help in identifying any disclosure gaps, understand what further information may be needed, as well as determine what actions are required to close any disclosure gaps effectively. To our viewers, we encourage you to read our publication for further detailed insights, observations, and considerations as it relates to each of these core content areas. Stay tuned for our final episode, where we will cover assurance and practical considerations that entities can take into account in enhancing their sustainability reporting.